everybody log back in? I need to dump this for a second and log back in.
You can get out.
I apologize for that. I inadvertently hit broadcast, which I did not want to do with an executive session. We're going out just simply on YouTube at this point. So, Madam Chair, I apologize. You have the floor. The meeting's yours.
Thank you. This meeting will now come to order at 5:34. We'll conduct a roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes. Mr. Gorham?
Here.
And Mr. Wazika. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. LeBlanc will please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. May I have a motion to recess into executive session per Rhode Island General Law 42465A12 for the following. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, session pertaining to litigation specifically to discuss the following. Soscia Holdings, LLC versus the Town of Coventry, KC 2020-0769. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2 on discussion regarding Lake Tiogue and Rhode Island DEM versus the Town of Coventry, KC 2002-5561, and closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1 on discussions of job performance, character, physical, or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the discussion on interim acting town manager contract. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I will second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes. 4 yeas, no nays. The motion is approved. We are now in executive session.
One moment, please. Let me kill the feed.
Ren, come in.
Oh, yeah? Uh-oh. All right.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Here for the first time. Evan? Do I have a motion to adjourn from executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I
I'll
have a
second the motion.
Thank you. Madam Clerk,
Yes.
Jamie LeBlanc,
warm welcome to our presenters this evening. Mr. Almy, Mr. Luke Murray will be on soon. He's a school committee member and chair of the Coventry Building Committee. Mr. Wozika, how many members of the public are with us this evening?
As of right now, we have 48.
48. Excellent. Welcome to those pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, session pertaining to litigation 0769, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 002-5561, and closed pursuant specifically for the discussion on interim acting town manager contract.
I will second it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ian Dixon,
Yes?
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's 5 to 20. Members of the council, are there any corrections for one correction on page 10 of 71, line 6, the word by? Members of the council, may I have a motion to approve the amended minutes? Roll call vote?
Ian Dixon,
Yes. Minutes, roll call vote?
Ian Dixon,
Yes. No nays. The motion passes. Members of the council, are there any corrections for the meeting minutes for December?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Yes.
Okay, 4 yeas, no nays. The minutes for December 30th, 2020 are approved. We now turn to agenda item C3, presentation. We're going to start with Mr. Mancini, Regulatory Analyst for the Rhode Island Public Utilities Commission, followed by an agenda item C4, presentation by Mr. David Simmons. After items may be made on any subject at the end of the meeting as stated in the agenda. You have a PowerPoint presentation for us, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
And I can make the opening statement as my first page there.
excellent.
How do I can advocate for the ratepayers of Kent County Water. And it was, or why it was there. It just showed a second charge. So people looked at it and said, why am I getting charged twice? And that was definitely an issue. And I believe it was an issue because there was only so much they can put on the antiquated billing system that they had. And hopefully that's going to change soon. So that problem should go away. But it did add to a lot of the confusion. And it did not, the bills were correct. They were just the way they were shown on the bill were just, very confusing. So that leads to the last issue was the 1-inch meter. This is a very interesting problem that I've seen for the last 20 years. On 1-inch meters have a stationary zero, and it's sort of weird, but what basically happens is that meter registers 10 cubic feet when it does one rotation on the meter itself. So when it does that, instead of reading 1 cubic foot like normal meters, it reads 10. And it has the stationary zero that accounts for the extra, the 10 instead of the 1 that it usually does. So what it does is, when Kent County reads these meters, they read to the nearest 1,000. And what happens there is if you use 999 cubic feet, it doesn't register on the bill. You only get billed for the 1,000. So until you reach the next 1,000, the 999 or less gets carried forward to the next bill. So what happens is this carry forward keeps moving and moving and moving until it reaches 1,000 and then it gets billed. So in certain cases, it could double someone's bill after the 4th or 5th billing cycle. And again, it just created confusion to some customers' bills. So on to the other reasons for high water bills. I mean, those are billing issues, but in the normal complaints that we reviewed, I've classified them in three different cases. Basically, the biggest one was excessive lawn watering, which we can pretty much prove by the data logs. The second was just extra summer watering in general due to extended dry period. And the third was actually leaks that were talked about a lot in the last couple of months. So we can I can address these a little further here. So the first one is the excessive lawn water. So approximately 80% were the result of preset irrigation systems. Now this is not just taking your hose and trying to water the lawn a few times a week. This is preset every morning when the sprinklers come on. And the data logs that we reviewed clearly showed the consumption patterns, which verified daily consumption and directly resulted in these high water bills. So irrigation systems were running anywhere between 2 and 5 hours per day, sometimes twice a day, not every other day, depending on what we looked at. And the average was anywhere between 100 and 300 cubic feet per day. Now, to give you an idea, the average household uses 20 to 25 on an average. So when you run an irrigation system, it's using 4 to 10 times more than your household usage. So an average of 200 cubic feet per day, which is pretty common in some of the larger homes that I've reviewed, for a 90-day cycle would result in a $1,200 bill right off the bat. I mean, that's without your normal household usage. So I've noticed irrigation systems were on through September and some into October, which is very rare for most years, but in this case, in this year, it was dry, and a lot of these systems continually ran, for an extra month, a month and a half, compared to normal. And it's very interesting is that consumption drop on the day that it gets shut off. It goes right down to that 20 to 25 per day through the rest of the year. And there's a very clear-cut example of that on the data log systems. And that shows, I mean, it's very, very clear. It's the exact time per day. I mean, there's no other way that this would be any other type of usage. It's clearly irrigation system. And when it goes off, everything goes back to normal again. The second issue wasn't as prominent, but it did add to some of the bills. It was just a warmer than average summer for 2020, which extended into the fall, as we all know. And this was verified by Kent County's water production that we took a look at, and it was about 16% higher this period than it was last year's summer period. So just a clear coordination between one and the other. And the third one are definitely due to leaks. Now, leaks were discussed a lot in the last few months, but they're not as prominent as most people think. But toilet leaks definitely were about 5% of my complaints. And these were all verified by the customer. The customer clearly, once I spoke to them, and I tried to tell them if there was anything different, and I asked them, and he says, oh, yes, that's right, I did have a toilet problem. In certain cases, it was minor, and I can tell right away by a data log. I look at a data log, I can tell exactly when that toilet's running and when it isn't. And small leak isn't really a big deal. It may add $100 to a quarter's bill, which most people wouldn't even realize. As it starts to get worse, it could add $300, $400, $500. But a large leak, which I've witnessed, and I had one customer, unfortunately, had the problem. His bill went up $1,100, and 1 gallon per minute, which is basically holding down the toilet, running constantly for 3 months, will add $1,300 to the bill. And you do the math, 1 gallon a minute, a gallon and a quarter roughly, depending on the pressure, how big the toilet is, a lot of different factors, but that can clearly add a large amount of money to 1 quarter's bill. And a lot of people don't realize that, but it is definitely possible. So the last thing was there were some billing errors that were found. I did not find them. They were already found by Kent County Water in the first round of reviews. And most of these all of them were actually data entry problems. It was manually entering in final meter reading on a meter that was replaced. Because of their antiquated billing system, they need to manually enter that reading when a meter is replaced. And unfortunately, some of them were entered incorrectly, and they were adjusted and rebuilt. And these errors obviously were found by them, and I didn't find any new ones when I reviewed them. So whatever came to me out of the 127, were all correct. So what is Kent County doing to address these concerns? So we basically met with Kent County, and we discussed these, and their future bills will include the actual consumption period and not the billing period. Kent County will process a new bill format hopefully in the next couple of months. So that new bill format will give much more information and be much more customer friendly. And the last thing is Kent County will transition to monthly bills, which was already in the process a year ago. The problem is they need to replace most of their meters before they can go into that monthly billing. And that was part of their rate case that we knew in advance that was happening. So these steps are all in the process, and hopefully by the end of the summer, we should have a new bill and a monthly bill, and hopefully these issues should not continue. Moving forward, the division will continue to review the remaining 40 complaints. Once the division has completed each complaint, the customer will receive the confirmation of the results, and that review process is completed. And if they're still not happy, they can request a formal hearing before the division if they disagree with the results. And the hearing officer at that time will grant them a hearing if he or she finds probable cause. And to get to that point, there's really going to be an issue, meaning that I can't find anything wrong, or the customer is just adamant that they did not use that amount of water, and they can prove that they did, and then a hearing officer would render a decision at that point.
Comments and questions. You were based off of my understanding. The
Nations would be if I had a portion of the period in the billing cycle, compare the two consumption periods. Now the data log would show daily average and the final reading, and that would give me a window, and then I would just estimate per day how 100 cubic feet per day. If I did the math on that complaint in that bill.
Okay.
Was the final reading, and at that point we would have that meter tested to make sure that it was accurate.
Okay, thank you as well, because I just want to know how many complaints in total you have received.
So the total was 127. I would say, off the top of my head, I would say at least 100 of them are from Coventry.
So the majority was
5, but I would say we'll give or take 4, 5 or 10.
Issues. I'm assuming you'll still be active for the ratepayers.
Other members of
An extra 700-800 ain't gonna make a big difference. But if you're an elderly couple and only uses 1,200-1,300 every quarter, now it's gonna make a big difference because you're used to a $75 water bill, and you can get a $75 water bill for 4, 5, 6 quarters until you reach that plateau where you hit that next 1,000. Now you're gonna get billed twice for usage that may have gone back like 6 or 7 quarters. It just builds up slowly until you reach 1,000, and then you get billed the extra 1,000. So it's a little of a weird concept, but
Should people have seen this happen every couple years then, really?
they would, but not so much what happened this year. Like in the case with the stationary zero, a lot of people, when I explained it to them, finally the light bulb went on and says, "Oh, that's why I got $135.02 bill 4 quarters in a row." It's like that's almost impossible. Like how can you get the exact 1,000, 2,000, 2,000? All of a sudden you got 3,000 or 4,000, depending on where that level was. So yes, that customer would feel that, since the beginning of that meter when it was installed. But they would never get double billed. So it was always a carry forward until it gets to that next 1,000. And in certain cases, I saw someone get billed 0, meaning they didn't use 1,000. So let's say you use less than 1,000 every quarter. You would get billed 0, then you would get billed 1,000, then you would get billed 0, then you would get billed 1,000, because it would have to reach the 1,000 to get billed.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely a confusing, but hopefully it's going away by the summer, so we won't have to worry about that anymore.
Ms. Ludwig?
Thank you, President Dixon. So, Mr. Mancini, you mentioned that if there's a future issue, it can get raised again. That was asked by Member LeBlanc. How about if someone has not raised it for the past issue? So, are they still allowed to raise a claim now for you to investigate if they didn't raise it for the bill a few months ago?
Yes, absolutely. Any point in time, anyone can contact our agency, and we will fully investigate any complaint. It can be a year ago.
Okay.
There's no time limit.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. So I wasn't totally clear at the beginning when you mentioned what, and maybe this is what Mr. Simmons will go into, but when the complaint starts or the inquiry starts at Kent County Water and they go to the customer service, how does it then go from Mr. Simmons to your organization? Can you just talk about, why did Puck get involved and how did they make it from KCWA over to your office?
Well, at first, a lot of them were coming directly to us. And once we started receiving more than 50 of them, we started telling them, says, look, you need to contact the company first. And that's the division's always what they tell a customer. When a customer calls, the first thing we ask them is, did you contact the company? Did the company explain their bill to you? And if they did not do that, then we refer them back to Kent County Water to say, look, have them explain the bill to you, see if you're satisfied with their explanation. If you are not, then you can call us back. In the meantime, Kent County Water will actually tell the customer that if you are not satisfied with the bill or our explanation, then you contact the Division of Public Utilities. And it is also on the bill, actually. On the back of the bill, it would say, if you have a billing dispute and you're not satisfied with Kent County Water, then you have a right to contact the division.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from members of the council? I have no questions from, Mr. LeBlanc.
I'm sorry, just one last one. Mr. Mancini, you did mention that the bill that actually went out to ratepayers said a certain date parameter, but the actual consumption was different. Going forward, will you require Kent County Water to ensure that what the dates that are on the bill to actually coincide with the actual consumption dates? Because obviously, I think personally, if the dates were accurate, it probably would have let people know that there were a greater number of days in this bill than past bills. So I just wanted to ask you that question.
Yes, they are working toward that. And I believe this next billing cycle, depending on when they can go to the new billing format, and I believe that Mr. Simmons can address this a little better than I can. The current bill is a little difficult to put more information in, from what I can understand. They can try and put in the dates, but I think they put in a in this case, they put in mid-June to mid-September, which is, give or take a week or two, is better than what they had on there of the billing period of August through October 31st. So going forward, I know they've changed that slightly to make it a little easier to understand, but I think until the new bill format comes out in March, I believe February or March, it's going to totally have everything on it, meaning actual readings, actual periods, consumption usage, averages. It's basically going to look like the electric bill, which has a lot of information on it.
Great, thank you. More transparency is always better. So thank you.
Yes.
I don't have any questions for Mr. Mancini. Mr. Mancini and I have had two extensive conversations in preparation for this presentation. So thank you so much, Mr. Mancini, for all the time you spent with me and for preparing this very clear PowerPoint. And we'd like to put your PowerPoint on our website. Is that okay with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce Mr. David Simmons, Executive Director and Chief Engineer from the Kent County Water Authority. Mr. Simmons, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Get some information out there to the people and get a better understanding what's happened here. If I could share my screen, please.
Yes.
Again, David, it's all set.
Can you guys see my screen okay?
We just see the word Zoom right now.
Dave, when you click it, it's going to open up your options and just choose the one you need.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys for having me. My name is David Simmons. I'm the Executive Director and Chief Engineer for Kent County Water Authority. I took over this position in April of 2019. I've been in the water and wastewater industry for the last 24 years. I have an undergraduate degree in toxicology and chemistry from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I have a master's degree in engineering from Worcester Polytech Institute. I've been in this business 24 years and I really enjoy it. And prior to here, I was on Block Island. I was a superintendent for the water. I ran the laboratory for the wastewater facility out there. And back in 2001, we actually went through a similar thing. We went through a full meter changeout program about 20 years ago. And Block Island's a unique place because it has some of the highest water rates in the country because you have to gather all your revenues in a 2 to 3 month time frame. So it's pretty challenging, but you can imagine when we changed the meters and a lot of them were reading a lot more accurate than the old meters that business owners were pretty much fit to be tied because their water bills went up. So I'm very familiar with this topic and went through a lot out there. So I have a lot of experience bringing to the table to this particular situation. Let's see. So the Kent County Water Authority is a regional authority that services 27,500 customers and about 90,000 people. We service 8 different pressure zones, which are here depicted on the right. And there's about 40 pieces of infrastructure utilized to maintain flow and pressure throughout the system. Basically, all these different colors that you see are different elevations, so to speak. And it's probably the most complicated water system in the state of Rhode Island. It's very unique in a lot of ways. And one of our major projects that we're doing is actually in the town of Coventry, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it, is our north-south interconnect going over Sandy Bottom Road and connecting our pressure gradient here in the south, the pink region, to the pressure gradient in the north. It's our north gradient, 500-foot gradients. All the 500-foot gradient means is that's just the overflow elevation of the water tanks. So like the water tank on the side of Route 95 next to Amgen, that overflows at 500 feet above sea level. Same thing on Reed Schoolhouse. We have a tank up there. It overflows at 500 feet above sea level up in the north. To build redundancy and resiliency to our system and maintain the highest water quality, we made a decision to connect these 2 gradients. These 2 gradients are very, very important to connect. Just in case one tank goes down, we actually have a backup tank to service the authority. So why is this important? So the town of Kent County Water Authority cannot meet any access beyond its revenue requirements. And all of the money, any money that comes into the authority through our rates goes right back into the authority. And our 2 largest infrastructure projects in the authority's history are actually in the town of Coventry. One being our water treatment plant on Tiogue, and this other one being the north-south interconnect, which are critical assets to Kent County Water Authority. So we always are constantly trying to reinvest into the system, and we've actually replaced almost half of the water mains in the entire there's 457 miles of main. We've replaced just about half of those in the last 30 years. And we continue to do so with our aggressive infrastructure replacement program. There's not too many other water systems that can say the same. So breaking down the number of active customers, I know this is confusing to a lot of people because we service 8 different communities. So how it affects Coventry, we have 8,483 people just in the town of Coventry alone. But you can see the breakdown here. So Coventry and West Warwick pretty much take the lion's share of the customers. East Greenwich and Warwick fall in between. So about 27,251 total customers. We're building cycles, A, B, and C. And so this map is actually available on our website under our projects page. And every green dot you see here is a meter that's been replaced. We actually started, the meter changeout program started in about June of 2019, but we were actually actively replacing meters out back of the latest generation style Neptune meters back to 2015. So there were 2,500 meters actually already installed in the system and functioning prior to the start of this system-wide meter changeout program. We chose Neptune and continue Neptune because they provided a great product. We also saved between $500,000 and $750,000 in avoided costs by maintaining the same vendors. So just on installation and obviously the raw product. So that's why we stuck with Neptune. It's a tried and true product. The meter that's installed is a mechanical meter that's been in service in the water industry for the better part of a century. And we have a lot of faith in it. So what's this map show? A, B, and C. So these are the different billing cycles. So our meter readers actually go out and physically walk and actually have to walk to every single one of these homes if they don't have a radio, and actually have to go to the house, punch a box on the side of the house, and obtain a reading. So you can see the town of Coventry, we're almost done with the meter changeout program. We started here over in A, in East Greenwich, Warwick area, and then we're working clockwise around our system. These little red dots that you see are people that are either refusing to install their meters, or there's been a number of cancellations due to COVID and a number of cancellations due to these meter billing disputes. There's a lot of people that just don't want us in their homes. So for a myriad of reasons, it's been really difficult to try to get this project going, which is essential on leveraging all the technology to get information out to our customers as fast as possible. And that's what's really at stake here. So you click, I provided this link, and I'll provide this PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format so the town can share it on their website, and I'll share it on ours as well. So started in 2019. So as of January 21st, we actually have installed 14,733. That's about 61% of the meters have been installed. We also had, like I said earlier, 2,500 meters already installed prior to this even getting started. So that number's closer to 16,000 and change. So here are the statistics so far. So we sent out 9,042 bills on our cycle A, and that includes mostly Warwick and East Greenwich, in that map that I showed you just prior to here. And this is for water used in half of May, June, July, and half of August. And like Mr. Mancini was stating, the billing period and the usage period did not line up perfectly, and it was extremely confusing to our customers, which we were agree with 100% and are addressing it moving forward. It's a problem with our antiquated billing software, and we're taking care of it. It's definitely a problem and an issue. But what I will make note of here is that we sent out 9,000 bills and we received 0 complaints. And many of these people, half of them, had brand new meters installed. October rolls through. We had 9,976 bills go out. And then all of a sudden we have 524 complaints come in. Same issue, billing cycle versus usage cycle. Half of June, July, August, September. We always have a ton of complaints that come in during these billing cycles because summer usage, people use a lot of water, and a lot of times they don't even realize whether it be a leak or high usage. It's just very normal for us to receive a lot of complaints during these billing cycles that encompass summertime use. And that's for any water utility for that matter. So our concern was, okay, we had these 524 complaints. Most of these complaints actually came in after November 5th. And that was when social media, let me get back. got you guys. Social media started, and I think we had 4 Channel 10 news articles, 3 Channel 12 articles, Gene Valicenti, and almost all the customers that called us said, I heard you on the news, I saw it on the news, there's something wrong, check my bill. We said, fine, we'll check every single one, and we want to make sure everything's correct, because to be honest, in the very beginning, in early November, we were getting a number of complaints. We're like, maybe there's a problem here. So we wanted to dig a little deeper, and that's why we wanted to commit to this full level investigation, just because it was abnormal for us to receive this number of complaints. I know there was social media, I know there was the news, and that drove some of it, but even to us, it didn't feel right. So we wanted to check a little deeper and make sure it was right. And so that's exactly what we did. And that's basically what these notes say down here. And the billing cycle versus billing period, it's a struggle. And like Mr. Mancini was saying, it's like, yeah, you try to get in 90 days, but when you're walking around to, 9,000 accounts and trying to get meter readings, it takes sometimes 2 to 3 weeks just to get the meter readings into the system. And then we do a post-processing step, which can take a week or 2, just to make sure that the bills that are generated are correct. Like we check for things for high use, no use. We call them exception reports, something that just seems anomalous to us. So that takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of manual labor on our part. So that's why there's time, like lengthy periods between billing cycles sometimes, because there might be a number of errors. And in this last case, we're like, maybe something's going on here. So we took a little extra time to check the system. So by the time, the meter readings and the bills went out, there was a little delay. So that caused more aggravation. So here is the total number of investigations requested to KCWAs of January 21st, 2021. This is what I provided to our board last week. It was 556. Let me go back to that last slide quickly. There was tremendous concern about the same thing happening the next quarter, the November billing cycle, and we've only received 32 complaints as opposed to the 524. So it really was focused to this area, and we were extremely nervous that we were going to get another hit of 500 here, but it didn't happen. So we're happy about that, and we're confident that at least in this cycle B Coventry that's going to be going out, that the customer should see all of their usage come back to normal. So back to this. So the total number of investigated cases is 556. Extreme cases, people that used a lot of water, we wanted to really focus on those. There's 29 of those. Anywhere between 100 and 200%, 72 of those. Number of investigated cases of reasonable increased usage, between 100 and 0. That's like half. You would expect that number to be high because this was a crazy summer and there was a lot of use and it was an extreme drought, plus COVID and things of that nature. So that number makes sense. What was really remarkable, and I wasn't expecting this, was that there was actually 142 people that either used less this year or the same amount. So I would say close to a quarter of all the customers that complained actually used more or the equivalent as past summers. The average increased daily use in gallons per day was 142 gallons, and the average increased daily use was 0.09 gallons per minute. And this speaks to what Mr. Mancini was saying. Even if it's a tiny issue, and you don't even notice it, that small amount over that length of time adds up, and it is tremendous. And we saw a number of those where there were actual leaks, but the majority of it was outdoor use, irrigation, just like what the division found, about 80%. The same thing when we've spoken with our customers, same situation with us. Those percentages and ratios were almost in line with what we were seeing and what we were hearing from our customers. We have 0 investigations that are in process as of right now, as it relates to the summer quarter. We did receive a handful in December. I did not include that as part of this statistic because I was really wanting to focus on the billing complaints and the summertime usage, but and the investigations that are of concern, particularly to the town of Coventry. So the percentage of investigated bills found error to date relative to the whole was 0.06%. Percent of investigated bills found an error to date relative to the amount of complaints received was 3%. We spent about 417 hours on these special investigations. A tremendous amount of time and resources went into this, and we're in the multiple tens of thousands of dollars in cost that have gone into this. We've taken this extremely seriously. We want our customers to be confident in what we're providing them is accurate, and it means a lot to us to make sure we get this right. So, next. So what is the billing process, the procedure that we use? So when we started getting all these complaints, I'm like, all right, guys, we need to not only check what's out in the system, we also need to check all of our internal systems because it's stated multiple times that there's probably an issue with our billing and accounting systems, which are archaic. I mean, they've been there for almost 30 years, and they're the same. It's the same system that's been in use and was used to generate all of these bills. So there's been no change to cause systematic changes and errors, and we didn't see any in our investigation. So when we went out and did our investigations, we wanted these 8 elements covered. A cover letter. The cover letter basically states what we saw in general to the customer. It was relatively generic in nature. And then what was very specific to each customer was the investigation form. What did we see? Was our accounting and billing, did the number that was generated in our accounting billing match the number that the meter reader actually read? Did they match? The meter, if the meter was removed, did the meter removed, the final reading on that match in our billing system? Yes or no? We have photographs of the meter that was removed from every single house, so we can confirm what was put into our system matches the meter that was pulled out from the house and a photograph taken of. We also maintain all of those meters for 6 months after they're removed from an individual's home in case there's a dispute. So if a customer, and this came in extremely handy in this case because we had all of the meters for all these disputes that they wanted their meters tested by an independent party. We had them in storage at Thelch Engineering up in Cranston. So we pulled the meter and we gave them to the division so they could be independently evaluated and tested. Another feature that we provided to the customer was the tabular and graphical history of their account. This allows them to look back in time 4.5, 5 years and actually see, did I use this much water in the past? Is this normal? A lot of what was happening was when people were comparing their spring quarter to their summer quarter. And every time Euro is going to have a crazy increase when you're comparing your summer to your spring quarter. And a number of cases, that's exactly what was happening. In particular, I think it was Pine Glen condos in Warwick. They were comparing their spring to their summer. They were saying that I used a 455% increase, if I'm remembering it correctly, and actually used a 152% increase in that particular instance. That one's been very highlighted in the news, and I provided that full investigation. Oh, Centerville Glen Condo Association. That was highlighted in the news and then highlighted again by a member of the General Assembly this past week. And I provided that full investigation on our website so anyone can review it. Old meter, new meter. Again, we had the pictures of the old meter when it was removed, the new meter when it came out, a meter slip. They actually do a hand written slip when they're actually removing the meter. They do a full audit. What's the line size coming in? What's the material of the pipe that's coming in case there's a lead service? We want to make sure all the lead services are removed from our system. What type of valves? Do they have a backflow preventer? Things of that nature are all being captured when we're in each individual home and put into an actual handheld application and put into a database. So they're writing it down by hand. They're also putting it in a handheld application. They're taking photographs of the entire before and after. And the last step of the investigation is the data log graph. So if a meter was installed mid-cycle, we actually were able to obtain a data log graph of actually down to the hour, how not only when the water was used, but how much on any particular day. Obviously, that was not available to anybody that still had an old meter, which a number of these complaints actually were on 100% on the old meter. So it was unfortunate because we couldn't get to the, all we had was a meter reading to go on. We didn't have this like granular level detail to share with the customers and maybe provide them some insight on what might have gone wrong or a particular issue. So that's basically the 8-step process, and we provided all of that back to our customers through mail and email, and asked the customers to please contact us, which a number have, and we go through it line by line. And if they further required a site visit for us to come out and maybe try to figure out what's going on, we did that as well. And we continue to do that, and we are committed to do that as long as it takes until the customers are satisfied. So all of the results we've been maintaining in a data set. And this particular graph and graphical representation here is available for the public to view on our website. And it just shows in graphical form, like where all the complaints came in. And, you know, the most egregious ones are obviously the red, and then you had the orange. And then you had the normals, which would be like that light green. And then the ones that actually had 0 or less is that sort of darker green. And when you go to this particular, and this is a dynamic map, and we're continuing to work on it, and hopefully we can get this completed in the next week or two. So anyone from the public can click on any one of those dots and get the granular level detail that was noticed in our investigation. Usage, continuous versus intermittent use patterns, anything that we used to determine that the bill was correct is all available here. And here you can see 81% have revealed no change or a decrease in consumption between billing periods, or expected slight increases due to the summertime usage. So you can see the majority of it relatively normal. So this other map that's also available on our homepage is the delivered report. So every report that we sent to our customers, we're creating a redacted version so their names are removed. So you can actually click on any one of these dots. And what we'll do is we're going to pull it out of Google Maps and put it in our GIS product. So it's a one-stop shop. So any member of the public can click on that dot and then get the full picture of everything. Right now we have it in 2 places until we're done. But just to give you an example on where we're going, I just wanted to give you some insight on transparency, that everything we're doing is fully available and can be scrutinized by any member of the public. This is just an example. Can you guys see this example?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the cover letter, okay? And we go through basically.
I can't see what you're, sorry, hold on. I can't see what you're talking about now. I still see the example map.
Yeah, me
Oh,
too.
you still see the example?
Are you clicking on the link? Is that what you want us to see, what's behind the link?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't see what's behind the link.
Okay, let me just see if I can do
The
this.
fun of screen share.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an example of a generalized cover letter that gets sent to all the customers, kind of describing what we found in general. And then we also did this component as a bill insert to every bill that went out on the following cycle to kind of explain what we were seeing and try to give some insight to the customers on, what's the problem, what could have possibly happened, and answer a lot of the questions that came through over our phones. How can I know how much water I used, and all things of that nature. The actual investigation report is here. So this is all the data driven out of our systems and confirmed and checked against our system to confirm that the bill was correct. Here's the graphical table, and you can see this customer actually used more in past summer quarters than this one. So this is an example of what I was talking about, where it was actually the folks used more in the past. Here's a picture of the old meter when it's removed with the final reading. And here's a picture of the new meter that went in. And like I said, the application, when the installers put in, they do a full review of the area where the meter is being installed, and they add all of this information there. Here's an example of the data log. So this is the daily use. Blue is normal. Red is either intermittent or continuous use. Intermittent use, we have a lot of intermittent use. And that's just basically means that you use more than 0.01 cubic feet half of the time during the day. It'll turn that bar graph red. We had a lot of people that just used a lot of water. They used half of the time, half of the day, the water was running for whatever reason. That's just what the data showed. We had a number, in fact, I actually wrote that down before I started. I had 358 show high use flags. 281 showed that the intermittent use, that means they used 50%. The meter measures 96 times a day. If 50 out of those 96 measurements show use, it's going to show up a red flag saying, hey, you might want to take a look here. You guys are using a lot of water. 77 of those actually showed continuous use. What continuous use is, the meter checks every 15 minutes, 96 times a day, so 4 cycles per hour, 96 times a day, 24 hours. If it's showing use for 24 hours a day in all those periods, it's going to flag it as a continuous use. All of those issues typically are either something was left on, a toilet leak, and across the board, and if we were able to detect it and share that with the customer, we were able to identify the problem, which has been extremely helpful to the customers. And hopefully we can get this on our bills moving forward, so the customers are armed with this information moving forward in a timely fashion, so they can address issues without 90 to 100 days after the fact.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Does that conclude your presentation?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. So interpreting the high use example, I just wanted to show you guys one of the extremes. So this is one of the continuous use flags that came through, and you can see something happened here and then it stops on an exact day. And I just this was a good example of what we can give to the customers and say, hey, you have a situation here, let's check it out, and go to the home, schedule an appointment, see if we can't find out what's going on. And you see how it shows continuous. This continuous flag, and there's 41 pages of data that I didn't want to bore everybody with, but it showed continuous going back, way back in time. How could we have possibly used all this water? Since the pandemic began, we're required, because we're a regulated utility, to provide information to the Public Utilities Commission and to the division. They wanted to know how much water is going into the system and are people paying their bills? Because a lot of people are out of work. What's the shift in demand? Where is the demand going? Are people going to be home? Everyone was concerned, and they were concerned about utilities being able to pay their own bills, because obviously if the customers can't pay their bills, then the utilities can't pay theirs. It's a vicious cycle. So that's what this data is basically showing, is how much water was flowing into the system and where was it flowing. So the dark blue is 2019, the light blue is 2020. You can see the massive increases in production in 2020 versus 2019. And then here in September, October, you see this massive shift, even into November, to our residential base. So this is the hard data that shows that there was a massive shift to residential use from commercial use. And this data is all publicly available for all regulated utilities and available on the Public Utility Commission's website. But I just thought I would share it with you guys just to show what comes in has to come out. And we use 290,000 more million gallons this year over last year. So if it comes in, it had to come out. So the only way it comes out is through meters. There have been a number of folks that have said, why is this only happening to Kent County? And so we were wondering the same. So we contacted all the major water utilities, and as of Friday, I spoke with the head of Warwick Water, and I said, what are you guys seeing over there? And they had just sent their quarterly bills out a few weeks ago. They are now handling almost the same number of complaints as Kent County Water, 475. So they are experiencing the exact same situation as Kent County Water is. When I contacted Providence, which services 60% of the state, they had the highest consumption amounts in their recorded history. So we're not alone. The only difference between Providence and Kent County is that they bill monthly. And so the customers are they can locate problems earlier, or it was spread out evenly over time. And that's where we want to go, and that's where we need to go. Pawtucket Water, Portsmouth, Bristol County Water Authority all reported the same. What's causing what was deemed rate hikes? We did not have a rate hike. It was based on the use, and we actually had a rate decrease of 15% in September. So we kept hearing, rate hike. It was just based on use. We had a rate decrease as approved by the Public Utilities Commission in September of 2020. Again, why does this appear to be happening at KCWA? Same issue. Warwick Water is also experiencing all the same investigations and reasons. They're not excuses. It's just what the data shows. I mean, if the water goes through the meter, it's a mechanical meter. They use Neptune meters as well. It can't move forward unless water moves through it. So all we have is that final meter reading. Again, moving to monthly billing is essential. This is, again, just talking about comparing summer to spring quarter. This is talking about the percentages that have actually had equivalent or less. 313 actually had relatively normal use because of the crazy summer we had. The meters are being installed. They're the exact same mechanical meters that are being removed. The only difference is that we can actually store the usage information in a separate reading box. But the mechanical meter is just like the pictures on the right. It's the same exact meter that's coming out. It's a mechanical device, been in service for well over a century. It's tried and true, extremely accurate. They only slow down over time. They've never, in my 24 years, I've never seen a meter speed up. I've only seen it slow down or not work. And that's it. I've never seen a meter speed up. It's a mechanical device. It's like your car. Over time, it's going to break down. It's going to wear out. The mechanical meter is the same thing. All new meters are certified factory tested to AWWA standards, as Mr. Mancini spoke about. We also, each meter that comes into us and is getting installed has a test tag, and over there on the right is an example of that. And that's the AWWA standard for high, intermittent, and low flow testing regimes that are required before that meter can leave that factory. I asked Neptune to provide me the results for every single meter that was installed in our system and provide it, and I will put it on our website for anyone to view to ensure that the meter that was installed in their home is accurate. This has been extremely popular with our customers. They can actually test their own meter with a 5-gallon bucket. And I show on our website exactly how to do that. So, and this is basically the steps that you would go to check that. And a number of customers, just to give them that own satisfaction that, hey, I can check this myself. I know that I'm comfortable that it's reading accurately. And so that way they don't have to trust what we're telling them. They can actually see it for themselves. And it's giving the power to the customer to know that the device that's in their home is reading accurately. And so we walk through the steps on how to do that simple process. And if they want help from us, we're more than happy to set up an appointment to go to their home and help them determine the accuracy of their meter. Also checking for leaks. I provided a link here. If the customer thinks they may have a leak, there's steps and ways to check for leaks here, all available on our website. And again, you can always call us and we will do our best to help the customers. So the new bills. So this is what I'm trying to get at the entire time. This is an example of the sample bill that we have created. And we're hoping to launch it in the next month or two, depending on the bill printing company we're working through to make sure all the data is getting transferred across and displayed. But this is our goal. This is what we're shooting for. And here is the bill date. And here is the actual defined usage period, the current consumption. Previous bill is basically what you would expect from a normal utility bill, and far better than what we had going, which was horrible. Our old bills were very bad and not very informative to our customers. A big point of contention and confusion to our customers is a lot of the old meters were replaced mid-billing cycle, so they didn't know how much was used on the old versus the new. So here it is, I'm breaking it out. 5.49 on the new meter, 1,400 cubic feet on the new meter. And to provide further detail on the reverse side of this bill, we go into the exact information that was pulled off of that meter on the old, and then all the new information on the new meter. So that way you can tie these numbers to what was actually pulled from the meter reading staff. Water quality protection charge, that's a standard charge required under Rhode Island general law, and service charges based on meter size. What's important here is information for the customers, the average daily use for this period. This is very important. This 192 gallons per day, this kind of gives, it's almost like a test that the customer can say, am I doing something more than normal, something a little bit off? And the recommended use is 65 gallons per person per day. So if you have a couple of people in your house, you should be seeing about 130 gallons per household in a household of two. So in this case, if it was a household of two and they're seeing 100, I'm using a little more, what are the reasons for that? And they can dive a little deeper into, and we wanted to put this in gallons because gallons is a unit that most people they're used to gallons. They're not used to cubic feet. So I wanted to make sure it was presented in a unit that was comfortable with people and they could understand and kind of wrap their heads around. This is the usage history, so they can actually look back over time to see if this has ever happened in the past. And over here on the left is the usage alerts, that continuous versus intermittent use I discussed earlier. That is going to be an alert that pops up over here. So if they see a continuous use, the customer knows they need to contact us or contact their plumber and say, hey, I have a problem here. Let's figure out what's going on. This is more of the granular level detail. And this is the tabular information for the graph that was provided on page 1. And then here's the conversion to gallons, just so people understand units that are more useful to them and more understandable. These are all of the terminology and what generates the bills. And was your meter changed out during this billing cycle? Yes. Okay. And just the usage alerts, the definitions of the usage alerts. So this is where we're going. We're also going to online bill pay, automatic bill pay, e-bill. It will all be available to the public in the next month or two. And so all of these resources will be available at their fingertips. And this is where we've been going for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, and it's taken us a long time. It's just happened between COVID and then this usage, billing complaints, everything kind of all happened at the same time. So unfortunately, we couldn't get this out sooner, but we want to make sure all the QA/QC is done prior to the launch of this massive change to our utility billing and customer information systems.
Mr. Simmons, we
17.
do have to move a little bit faster because we have a very extensive agenda. We do want to leave time for public comment. So maybe you can get through this a little bit quicker.
Okay. So there are 17 clerical errors. This is a picture of one of our customer service agents. We actually have to go by hand through every one of these pages and check to see if there are issues. This is what I'm talking about, the arduous manual process, checking for high usage, consumption. Here are a copy of the meter slips that we're hand entering, which was the result of why we had the clerical errors we had. Because we had those clerical errors, I wanted to make sure that the systems were okay. So we did an independent audit of another 500 accounts, and we actually found 6 more errors. So we're actually going to go through every single account where a meter was installed and check for clerical errors. Even though there were tiny amounts, it was maybe $1 or $2 here, wasn't much, but we want to make sure they're exactly correct. Because it was a manual process, these things happened, and we want to make sure everything's correct. Additional QA/QC on all meter getting installed into the system manually. We're doing it in 3 steps. We're all checking the hard meter slip, which you see there on the right. We're checking the actual photographs, and we're also checking the application. And there were no systematic billing or meter issues found in the meter readings, old and new, or in the old billing software. All customers were satisfied with the findings or did not respond to our investigation results. Customers that were, however, still concerned, KCOE did set up site visits and try to help those customers determine the issue. Customers that still did not agree went to the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers. KCWA urges any customer that did not receive a response from us to please contact us so we can get that account investigated. The antiquated 30-year-old customer information utility billing software is in the process of being replaced. The new bills, which I just described, will arm the customer with every piece of information. And we are filing with the PUC. It's going to be a multi-month process in order to move to monthly billing. And that's all I have to say. That's my presentation.
Well, thank you so much for that extensive presentation that covered many of the areas, in fact, all of the areas that we've been hearing about that have caused some issues for our customers. I'd like to ask any members of the town council if they have any questions for you. Members of the town council? Mr. LeBlanc?
I did see a hand raised in public comment section. There was one. Actually, there's 3 attendees. I don't know if you want to start with them first.
No, I'd like to start with the council members and then move to public comment.
Okay. Then I certainly can ask mine. For the homeowners that have not switched out their meters, are they getting letters that they're going to be their water's going to be shut off if they don't switch over to the new meter currently?
No.
Okay, because I did receive one of those letters.
Huh?
I said I did receive one of those letters, so I just wanted to confirm whether or not that was continuing.
So what we're doing, Mr. LeBlanc, there's 3 notices that go out. And then if the customer doesn't respond to the 3 notices that go out from the meter installation company, King County then sends a 4th notice saying, because there was a number of customers that did not receive those postcards. So we want to make sure the customer knows that this is happening. So now we're sending out a 4th notice, which we actually go and hang the house and say, hey, listen, can you please set up an appointment to have your meter changed? And then a 5th notice will go out if they do not make an appointment, where a termination notice would be notified. Currently, we are not issuing any termination notices either for non-compliance or non-payment due to COVID. That will have to change at some point in the future if people keep refusing. And we have to get the meters installed over time. So we have at least 300 to 400 people that are refusing to let us into their homes due to COVID. Obviously, we can't go, if people are concerned about their health, we're not going in their home. So that's kind of where we're at with this COVID situation.
And then for homeowners that still haven't switched over, on the day of the switchover, are they getting a photo and or a receipt of their final reading before the meter leaves their house?
Yes.
Okay. When did that change?
Well, they always were supposed to be left with a receipt, basically a card of the meter installation company was supposed to give a card with their contact information. So in case there was a leak or something, they had a number to call and say, hey, my meter's leaking, come back, you need to fix it. So we modified that as a result of this last couple of months to also include the customers. We were urging them to take their own picture of the meter as it's. We're taking a picture, but we're telling them to take a picture, and then we leave them with a receipt with the final read and a sign off that the meter was removed. Here's the final read, and they verified the final reading that was on the meter.
Okay. Sorry, two more questions, President Dixon. Since the new meters do give you daily usage, and clearly through the presentation you gave us, you showed a couple customers and there were a significant amount of usage on certain days, and you called it continuous use. Does Kent County Water, since we're still on a quarterly billing basis, is Kent County Water reaching out to those customers to let them know that they have flags?
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned this antiquated system that hadn't been replaced in 30 years. I mean, based off of the financials of Kent County Water, I mean, the operating income is anywhere between $8 and $9.5 million a year. I just didn't know why. I mean, one reason why, in my opinion, this issue was happening is because of the lack of transparency in the bills. Why did it take so long to update the system?
I don't. Started in April of 2019. We've been talking about it. It's a major process changing an entire utility billing and customer information system. And IBM, Avenue, it went through multiple iterations and steps and versions over time. I've been there since 2012. There were probably 6 or 7 updates to the existing system, but they still were archaic, and they couldn't mine out the information that we needed in the best possible way, in an easy kind of way. And with the technology advancing as quickly, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, what's available now wasn't available even back in 2012. So the systems have really come a long way, cloud-based. So a lot of that, you had an older general manager at the time and didn't want to necessarily change because the system that was in place was working, and didn't want to change. So I'm changing it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the council at this time? Ms. Ludwig?
Thanks, President Dixon. So, Mr. Simmons, thank you for walking through a very detailed analysis. I did check out some of the responses that Kent County had provided back to a few of the residents. They were multiple pages, very thoroughly investigated. So thank you for taking this extremely seriously. I've had multiple people reach out to say this is, they couldn't believe that this had happened and they wanted answers. So thank you to everyone contributing to a detailed analysis on this. And for taking it so seriously. I did have a question. I've heard some reference to the new meters being digital. I just want to clarify. So you are calling the new meters, they're still a mechanical meter, but is there some sort of digital component that is registering the amount and sending it, or how does it, what's the real benefit there and what's the difference?
This is one of the meters. You see it's an odometer analog, and it's a mechanical meter. There's a disc moving inside here, and it's physically turning these dials. And when these dials turn, it's basically hitting a sensor saying, okay, this number says this number says that, this number says that. And that information then gets stored in a separate box. So the mechanical just grabs the number, doesn't care, it's just a physical number, and then stores it. And then you take that number stored over time, you can actually drive out usage and the daily meter reading from that. So because the chips in the radio device that's sending it to the trucks and our meter reading staff can actually store the daily usage information that way. So it's a hybrid. It's a combination of an old archaic mechanical system that's tried and true and easy to read, and then combining that with state-of-the-art digital interface.
Thank you for showing us.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Mr. Wazeeko, I'd like to open it up to public comment. I'd like to allow a max of 10 minutes with comments specifically relating to the Kent County Water Authority presentations this evening. We, of course, will have public comment at the end of the meeting on any subject that any person wants to raise. So let's go to the people who are on the call today. Thank you. Let them in one at a time, please.
Yes, ma'am. Going in order, we have Robin. Robin, if you would please state your name, spell your name, last name, and give your address.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Frank Allard. I'm a resident at 6 Briarwood Court. The house, this account, and the water meter account is under my fiance's name, which is Robin Simino. I'd like to thank the town council members for stepping in and hearing this issue. I'd like to thank Mr. Mancini and Mr. Simmons for their comments. I have a number of questions. I'm going to try to go very fast at this because time is limited. My first is a comment that the meters represented in tonight's presentations are not the meters, is not the meter that's installed in my house from about a year ago by the Water Authority. The meter we have installed is an E-Coder R900i meter. It is something different than what was shown tonight in tonight's presentation. My first question to Mr. Simmons, Mr. Mancini. Have you reviewed consumer variations in the billings or water consumptions? What are characterized as what you called gross anomalies? Have you found gross anomalies in the billings of the water consumption amongst your water users?
No. I mean,
You haven't found it, or you did not do that study?
well, we did, when you say gross anomalies, the analysis is provided on our website and what I discussed earlier. What I would consider a gross anomaly is usage that, when compared to past summer quarters, would exceed 200%. So really high percentage usage. And a number of those are presented in detail on the website, red dot.
So during this course of installing new meters and having so many complaints, you did not study everyone's billing every quarter to see if there were gross anomalies from customer to customer in billings?
I mean, in general, yes. I mean, we interrogate our billing every month that it goes out. We basically do 9,000 bills per month. Each month for each quarter, it's about 27,000 in a quarter. And that stack of paper that you saw one of our customer service agents holding is part of the process of going through and actually checking for gross anomalies.
Okay, my second question goes out to Mr. Mancini. You mentioned about testing the water meters. Was that an in situ test, meaning in place, or did you pull the meter out and bench test the meters?
We pulled the meter out. We bench test the meters at Providence Water Facility that I witnessed, and that facility has an AWWA standard that's been passed.
Okay, my third question to either Mr. Simmons or Mr. Mancini, did you ever volume test these meters in place at the houses where you investigated?
We had a number of homeowners do it, and like what Mr. Mancini was saying, any customer that was not satisfied with potentially, and we actually had to pull brand new meters out of homes and have them tested as well.
I
they
would
were-
submit that a 5-gallon test is not sufficient to determine the problem in the meter.
So that is a back of the envelope test available to the customer.
Okay?
We just wanted to provide that as just giving the customer a level of comfort in knowing that the meter that's provided has been certified and tested in a AWWA certified testing facility prior to even coming to us,
I understand.
providing certified test tags and certified test results for every single meter that's being installed into our system.
My next question goes out to Mr. Simmons. Were these meters installed by a contractor or someone in the water authority?
It's both, but the majority are with an independent hired contractor.
Did any of your contractors ever voice concern about the installation of these meters?
No.
Mr. Allard, I appreciate all your questions. You've already used 4 minutes of the allotted 10 minutes. I invite you to come back at the end of the meeting to ask any more questions that you would like to ask. But I would like to give opportunities to some of the other people on the call to ask a couple of questions. Is that okay with you?
Well, to be honest, I've been waiting quite a while to speak, and if you don't have time for me, I'll say good night. Thank you.
We do have time for you at the end of the meeting. We'll be happy. We've got 6 more hands up, so we want to get at least some of the questions out by each person.
What time is the end of the meeting?
We can go as late as 10 o'clock this evening, and by vote, we can extend.
So, Chairman, if you could share your email address, I would like to communicate with you.
Absolutely. District 1 at coventryri.org.
Thank you.
You can always come back. Mr. Wazzy, could you bring in the second person, please?
Jeremy, please state your full name, spell your last name, and give your address, please.
Jeremy Coutu, Coutu, 34 King Street. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to speak. I just want to go over a couple of facts from my case that have still not been adjudicated by Kent County Water Authority. As everybody knows, there was a dramatic increase. So mine increased 120% from last year. We had over 12,000 cubic feet of water used at my home. And it all is in an 8-day period. May, June, July, August, September, 2/3 of September are all normal usage. But in an 8-day period, 11-day period, 8 of those days, I used over 5,000 gallons of water in a 4-hour period, stating that I used 20 gallons of water per minute in my home. Kent County Water did reach out after I sent a nasty email and put Senator Raptakis on copy. Dave, your mechanic, came to my house. He's got 35 years in the business. He could not find anything wrong in my home. Said he would state my case to you. I haven't heard anything. It's been 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks since you filed your complaint? Hello? Hello?
Mr. Coutu, we can't hear you. We've lost connection.
Sounds like it's been 2 weeks since someone went out.
But he can't, Mr. Coutu can't hear the response. Why don't we move on to the next question, and when Mr. Coutu comes back on the line, we'll return to his question.
James, please state your full name, spell your last name, and give your address, please.
Thank you. James Aronakis, Erinakes, 18 Ironwood Drive. My question is very quick. At the end of the presentation, which provided a ton of information, and thank you for that, you said to reach out if you're one of the customers that called and has not received a response. I am one of those customers. So I called the Kent County Water Authority, left a message. They told me that I would be in the queue. I haven't heard anything. So who exactly do I reach out to if I have not heard back based on the original call?
When was the original call?
End of November?
Can you please reach out again, contact me directly. I'll provide the council with my direct information, and I will make sure that you're addressed immediately.
Thank you.
Mr. Aranakis, I believe you're in my district on Ironwood.
Yes, I
Can
am.
you please either CC me or reach out to me?
Sure.
I'm at District 2 at coventryri.org.
Thank you.
Into it tomorrow.
Mr. Waziga, the next caller. Mr. Waziga, we cannot hear you.
One of those days. Mr. Raptakis, please state your full name, spell your last name, and give your address, please.
Sure. Leonidas Raptakis, Leonidas, Raptakis, 2080 Nooseneck Hill Road. I want to thank Madam President and the members of the Town Council and the Kent County Water Authority and Al Mancini for spending time tonight regarding Kent County Water. I've heard a lot this evening. We've been working on this issue going back November. We had sent out a letter to Kent County Water, a group of legislators, stating a lot of these points, and I'm glad to see that moving toward the future, that Kent County Water will give every customer a written receipt and also a photographic receipt once that meter is removed from the household, because out of all the folks that we've contacted, a majority did not receive a receipt or any proof of what the last meter reading was, something that National Grid does when you do remove a meter. Another issue was a lot of folks complained about that every time they call Kent County Water Authority blamed it on leaky toilets. We see tonight that that was only 5%. So there is a lot of issues that still are unanswered. We're still getting complaints that people have not received a response from Kent County Water. So on our end of the General Assembly, on the Senate side, and I've spoken to some members of the House, we are moving forward to write a letter to the Auditor General, Dennis Hoyle, to conduct a full investigation of Kent County Water. I know when we had a hearing back in December, the chairman, Bob Boyer, was very receptive to that, so I don't see a problem of bringing in the Auditor General, just like we did under the Coventry Sewer Program, which it gave a lot of insight, a lot of details with the report, and a lot of recommendations to help the consumer find what the answers are, because there is still a lot of issues, I think, that are concerning. There's even other areas we even haven't addressed of fire lines, fire hydrants, having random inspections of the meters. And what is also interesting, we talked about a drought this summer, that a lot of water was used, but I can't remember seeing a water ban at all by Kent County Water notifying customers that there's going to be either a water ban, don't use that much water. But the list goes on and on. There is a lot of issues, billing, atrocities, and then when I heard, I think Mr. Simmons said that there was very minor differences in the billing, maybe $1 or $2. I've got two individuals, one that lives in District 2, that he was reimbursed almost $600 because of major errors. Another customer, $400, because instead of reading 1,100 cubic feet, they read 11,000 cubic feet. So there's a lot of issues. So I believe that the General Assembly, speaking to both the House and Senate and the leaders, are going to move forward with inviting the Auditor General. And this audit's not going to be a month or two. It's probably going to take at least 9 months. But hopefully we can get some answers. And lastly,
Senator Raptakis, we've exceeded our 10 minutes. Could you please wrap up as
oh yes, I am. I just said lastly, Madam President. And lastly, I also would want to find out, did our two members who represent the town of Coventry as board members of the Kent County have responded to any of the complaints or responded back to the council as we were proceeding from last November regarding the complaints of the customers? Because our board members should be representing the customers, not taking the stance of the company. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We've allotted 10 minutes. I know that there's been people who are waiting very patiently, but we have a very long agenda. We do promise to stay on for public comment at the end of the meeting. It can be on any subject. And I would like to move on. I appreciate Ms. Malino, Stephen, and Mr. Allard. We want to hear your questions, but we do need to move forward right now. So the next subject is a presentation and discussion from the Coventry School Building Committee Chair, Mr. Murray. Oh, by the way, Mr. Mancini and Mr. Simmons, could you please remain on so that you might be able to answer more questions at the end of the meeting? I'd appreciate it if you could do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. I'll make it brief tonight. I know you've had a long agenda and quite the presentation there. So just wanted to give you a quick update on the necessity of school construction effort. As you know, we're moving towards the submission deadline. I'll share my screen quick. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So just to give you a quick update, key items since our last update, the school building committee has met with the further discussion of the stage 2 report. We received an update from Studio Jade on the deliverables that they needed to get for the report. They have quite the long list. They are working on that. We did talk about exploring the addition of a sports field to the Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. As part of our current design for that facility, we'd be taking 2 small fields away, ball fields. What we discussed was adding in a combination soccer, lacrosse, multi-use sports field into that may be associative with the Foster Field complex. So it'd be on that side of the development. So that is in process, and Studio Jade will have an update at our next building committee meeting. We've also received a financing plan, and thank you to Mr. Wazika for coordinating that with Ms. Massaroni from PFM. That'll be part of the stage 2 report. I'll be reviewing that with the building committee this week, and then we will be reviewing that with the council as well. So expect that by email this week, and then we will review it in our next meeting on the 1st. And then, as you know, there's quite a bit of documentation that's ongoing. So we're continuing our focus on the middle school. The design documents are continuing to move forward through refinement. What's in process right now is a independent cost estimate of that facility and the additional work scope that has been outlined by the architect and the building committee. So that will take a couple weeks to ring out, but it is in process and we're working on that. I'll skip to the next thing. Updated schedule. So Ms. Alita Hall, my co-chair, is as many of you know, a construction manager for Gilbane, has excellent scheduling capabilities. I've met with her as well as a few members of our building committee and the architect to start laying out the next schedule for our project, which will take us from February 1st through the end of the year. This is a schematic schedule. We'll be talking about this at our building committee meeting this week, revising it and setting deadlines. And we'll be reaching out to the town manager on this as well to start backing up key dates. As I talked about in the earlier presentations, it's key that if we do decide to move forward, there's some pretty critical timelines in order to be eligible for the additional bonus kicker from RIDE for the additional 10%. We would have to start construction in prior to 2023, and that means commencing construction. So it's an aggressive timeline when you back that schedule up. So we are keeping our feet to the fire by having a schedule updated. So upcoming meetings and events. This is a busy week for us, for me. So I'm obviously giving you the high-level view tonight. On the 26th, which is tomorrow, we meet with the RIDE School Building Authority to review the Stage 2 documents. So that'll be another deep dive with the school building authority. They'll make comments and we'll address anything they see outstanding at this point. The next day on the 27th, the school building committee will be meeting and primarily focusing on reviewing the report and we're recommending to hopefully to approve to move on to the school committee. Then on the 28th, we have a school committee meeting and we'll be also providing a presentation to the school committee on the stage 2 report with a hope to recommend or vote to recommend to council for approval and submission. And then we do have a date slotted with the town council on the 1st to make a presentation. We'll provide a full presentation. Phil Conte will be here with Studio Jade to give you all a deep dive into the stage 2 submission and answer any questions that you have. On the 9th, we will continue to have our building committee meetings and thereout we'll have monthly meetings. But what we're going to do is pivot onto information sharing, so community outreach on the project to inform them what we've been doing, where we intend to go as we wait on the RIGL stage 2 approval process. And then the 15th is really our key date. That is the mandated deadline for the necessity of school construction stage 2 submission. So with that, I will entertain any questions that you may have, and I will stop sharing.
Are there any questions at this point? Mr. Murray will be back for a full presentation in just 1 week. Ms. Ludwig?
Thank you, President Dixon. So, Mr. Murray, are you going to be including in the next detailed session some discussion as to the impact of the rejected budget on, I know there was some sort of potential impact for our ability to pay. I don't know all the details. I didn't attend the last committee meeting.
So I think that was relevant to the state requirements to fund maintenance for our buildings. That was what was discussed, and the need to fund that through our operational budget, or somehow cut our way back into a budget that affords the building maintenance. So it won't be part of my presentation specifically. It's certainly something we should be discussing when we talk about the 22 budget, because that needs to be included as part of the conversation as a total budget, and especially on the school. So it's part of the narrative, but for this particular report, we'll be addressing more of what the submission is, because that's really what we're moving forward at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions by members of the council? Okay, I'd like to thank Mr. Murray. Mr. Murray is a family man. He has a full-time job. He's on the school committee. He's the chairperson of the Coventry Building Committee, and you can see that he has nothing to do this week. So,
Nothing.
but February 1st is a very important date because the council will be asked to vote on the presentation and the proposal that will go forward to RIGL. So I'm sure we'll receive some materials ahead of time, but that's a very important date for us to be ready for. So thank you very much, Mr. Murray.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to agenda item 6C, presentation by the interim town manager, Mr. Ed Wazika, an update on the wind turbine and shadow flicker issues. After this presentation, I'll allow 10 minutes for public comment on the subject. And of course, I will reopen public comment at the end of the meeting for questions on any subject. Mr. Wazika.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. It's a long night. And let me move to my first slide. All right. I'm going to give a little bit of background information on the thing in case anybody's unfamiliar with the issue of the flicker from the thing. Due to an ongoing issue of shadow flicker, the town hired Epsilon Associates back in 2018 to conduct a shadow flicker modeling of the 10 wind turbines located in Coventry. And what that was to do was to go and analyze and determine what buildings would be affected, if any, by the flicker. The purpose of the modeling was to present the expected annual duration of wind turbine shadow flicker at nearby primary structures within the town. The turbines were modeled with the WindPro software. All structures located within 1.25 miles of a wind turbine were modeled. There is no set standard for the amount of distance to model in these types of situations. The bare minimum would have been about a half-mile distance out. The state of Connecticut uses a 1.25 mile radius on it. The minimum is based on the turbine height and 10 times out from there. We ended up, when this study was done back in 2018, we used the bigger distance to 1.25 that Connecticut uses. Doing that, there were 986 receptor locations were modeled. So that means almost 1,000 point properties within that 1.25 mile radius that could be affected by the wind turbines and flicker from them. A bare earth scenario was utilized, which means all obstacles such as buildings and vegetation were excluded from the analysis. What that means is it basically builds a worst case scenario. There's no natural obstacles keeping the flicker from hitting those buildings. Out of the 978 to 986 receptors, 686 of them had produced 0 hours of flicker or were predicted to have 10 to 30 hours, 30 hours being the maximum that we were allowing under our special use permit. Also, what's recommended by the more than 30 hours, the allowable amount. One of those actually had was expected to have 99 hours of the other receptor out of the nearly 1,000 was receptor 287. Okay. I said prior, the construction of the turbines with the special use permits was limiting the flicker to 30 hours a year. One of the issues we ran into with this is they were not specific, and they didn't differentiate between, was a combined 30 hours of all of them, 287. It exceeded, and back in June of 18, a notice of violation was issued to WED on that. Last year, during the global settlement, the flicker issue was settled as part of that, and with WED agreeing to maintain the maximum 30 hours combined is actually affected by 5 different turbines at different times of the year. So the question is, how do we end up reducing that to the 30-hour minimum maximum that's allowable by our ordinance as well as the recommended by the state? What I've got here is a map showing the ISO lines of the amount of flicker that these properties would actually receive. All of the white dots are part of the receptors. Let me go back 1 second. Anything after the blue is going to receive absolutely 0 of flicker. There's no 30 hours. The yellow into the orange, 50 to 100 hours, and then the red in would be 100 hours or more, which we have the one located over here near Town 2, which is the Pachillo area, and that was the one again because there's no it's a non-inhabited resident. It wasn't an issue. So just the only one is the single one from here. Okay. So what, as part of the agreement, the global agreement, WED had purchased and installed a shadow flicker monitoring and management system from Northtech Automation Technology. The system is programmed to interpret shadow flicker that will impact receptor 287. It's 20, I believe the address is what, 2315, if I'm not mistaken. Victory Highway. The system consists of light sensors that's mounted on the top of the turbine, and control systems that are installed in the turbine control cabinet. There's also additional controls set in turbine 2A. And what that does is it links both groups of turbines together and it allows the system to manage and operate and be able to utilize shutting down the system when the flicker is going to occur beyond the 30 hours that's allowable. This system that's installed can actually monitor up to 2,000 buildings simultaneously, as well as 100 wind turbines at the same time. So it's a very robust system. At the time, it's currently monitoring and analyzing and protecting Site 287. What you do with this thing, with it monitors based on wind direction, speed, altitude, height of the wind turbine, location of the property, GPS on all that. It analyzes all of that and monitors the amount of flicker that's being generated at that GPS location. The system has the ability to shut down daily or work from an annual combined system, a combined amount of time. The projected amount of time over the allowable was approximately 7.5 to 8 hours is projected to be on. What WED did, and it's all agreed to in the global agreement, is this system, instead of waiting until the 30 hours is met towards the end of the year and shutting down so it doesn't produce flicker later on in the year where it would have less effect on the homeowner, WED's got it programmed so it shuts down for the nearly 8 hours during the prime summer months. So it shuts down the turbine 5A is the one that's actually doing most of the effect. It shuts that down for the additional 8 hours during the summer. The system continues to monitor. So if receptor 287 was to receive additional time because of the fact that maybe we received more light than we were anticipating, or there was a longer flicker area, because the modeling is all done based on anticipated maximum amounts. But if this thing monitors in real time, so if it had gone over that, it would have automatically shut down as well later into the year. The monitoring that I've received indicates it didn't have to. It shut it down during the summer months. It monitors at all times. When the flicker is going to occur at the location that it's monitoring, it will shut down the turbine so it doesn't produce the flicker. The system can also monitor and shut down in the event of migratory birds and those types of things. Here is we've got the flicker shutdown that occurred between 5:15 and 7:29 to come up with the nearly 8 hours of shutdown to keep that building within the 30 hours of maximum allowable flicker. It's I know it's still allowing flicker up to 30 hours, but that's what we're allowed to by law or by recommendation, as well as in compliance with these special use permits. Okay, one other thing I forgot to mention. How do we guarantee that this is met and the 30 hours is not exceeded? In the global agreement, let me just read it, it'll be easier. The town shall provide the green entities a 10-day notice to cure the non-compliance. If any non-compliance occurs, along with copies of the reasonable supporting evidence related thereto on which Epsilon or other third-party similar engineering firm has relied on determining the non-compliance. If within the 10 days they do not effect the cure, the town can go into court, absent manifest error, to immediately receive injunctive relief in Superior Court, forcing him to shut down the turbine at that point, as well as pay any reasonable attorney's fees that we had to incur to make him do it. So if he fails to do it, the agreement allows us to get an injunctive relief immediately, but that he will not contest it, cannot contest it based on the agreement that we have. So the quick down and dirty on what's going down, where we are. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try and answer the questions.
Any questions from members of the council? Ms. Ludwig?
Thank you, President Dixon. So, Mr. Wazika, that was a lot of information. So, I just want to understand. So, the box that you're talking about that's doing the monitoring, that was installed in 2018?
No, that was actually installed prior to and during the negotiations for the global agreement. WED had talked about this device for quite some time, and it had never gotten installed. When the council made the decision to negotiate with him, He made sure that the system was in place, operational, and he actually activated the system prior to signing the agreement and completing the global agreement as a measure of good faith. So he got that operational and burning. That's why you see these back in the summer, and the agreement wasn't signed until September. But this had already been shut down for nearly 8 hours of operational time during the summer to make sure he was in compliance with the 30 hours for this year on that location.
So where is the information sent that it's collecting that says, "Oh, we've hit the max"?
It's maintained in the system. I've been in contact with Epsilon. I'm waiting to hear back from them to actually see about having them monitor the entire thing if they can, what it would cost, and to be able to give us a heads up on if anything does take place, if anything other than the 30 hours is produced. So I'm, like I said, I'm working with them now, or in contact with them to get that piece of it done.
Okay, so as of right now, there's no independent party looking at this that we know of.
There's been no additional shutdown time since then. I had asked for, and we're going to receive a monthly report on the shutdown. There's been no shutdown since this time frame. So we started the new 30 hours. What I have now advised WED is that I want a monthly data dump from them no matter what. Whether it's up, running, it goes down. So we're going to be receiving at the end of each month now a full data dump involving the system.
So thank you for requesting. It still seems like we have an issue though if I think it was in one of the slides you were just showing that we only have a certain amount of time once something is registered as it hitting the maximum, and then Coventry has to report and say, oh, they've exceeded something.
No. If it's determined that they've exceeded the 30 hours, we could go into a court and get an immediate injunctive relief and force him to shut down the turbine that's producing the offending additional flicker over the 30 hours during any time that the flicker would occur.
So it sounds like we'd have to know that it actually occurred, and right now we're not getting that information.
Well, we'll be receiving a monthly report as of January, at the end of January. That's why I'm in contact with Epsilon to see if they can do something to monitor and advise us if they see any violations of it. I haven't got a price on it yet. I'm working, like I said, I've been in contact with them to try and get that, and hopefully within the next month or so we'll have that in place. So we'll have an outside party monitoring as well, and that's part of the agreement on that outside party monitoring it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from members of the council? Ms. Shockley?
Because the monitoring system can cover so many, you said up to 1,000, I think?
Up to
2,000
points, correct.
Would it behoove us to do the other 28 that are within 10 and 30 hours? Monitor those as well? Is flicker constant? Like, is it consistent, I should say?
No, it isn't.
Right, so if there's others that are going to go above the 30.
No, none of the others are projected to go anywhere near the 30.
Okay, you have 10 to 30, so.
Yeah, the Epsilon report is based on the average amount of daylight time. It doesn't take into account, those projections don't take into account adverse weather, conditions where there are days where there's no wind blowing. This assumes the worst case scenario that the sun is shining, the normal amount of hours during the day, and that the wind is blowing all day based on, or at normal annual average during those time frames. So it's giving us a worst case scenario on it, the expected. The reality of it is, in most cases, almost all cases, it's actually going to be less hours than what the report is predicting. The predictive report is giving you higher numbers than what the reality is on those.
So can I just ask, because I truly am not that knowledgeable on this, Is it possible, this might sound completely naive, would there be ways of turning things off when flicker was expected to happen for beyond just, oh, it went to 30 hours? Like, it seems residents have a real problem with this flicker, even though if you don't live in one of these homes, it seems very minimal. But if we can turn it off for 8 hours in the summer, are we turning it off could we turn them off during times of peak flicker?
That's when they're being turned off now.
Beyond just this
30.
one, or these 5. I'm just asking, I truly
Right.
am.
When we were negotiating with them on this whole thing, the cost for them to shut this down is because of loss of revenue, the loss of generation. On top of, he doesn't own these, he manages these for the most part. Most of these have been sold to other entities. So he manages them. So we have to maintain, and so getting them to shut it down to produce even less than the 30 hours was a non-negotiable issue with them when we were going through this. Like I said,
You looked into it.
Oh, we did at the time. They were not willing to go below the special use permits, limited up to 30 hours was the max, and they have met that on all the points except for this one, and that one's now been reduced because of this monitoring system, and this that shuts it down. So yeah, they were not willing to go on the others or bring it down even further.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Wazika, I have a couple of questions. Now, how many monitoring units are there? Is there just one monitoring device?
There's one monitoring unit that with the light sensors in it, and then the control systems are into the control cabinets on 2 turbines that are part of 2 separate groups. So they can monitor, they can shut down the turbines in that group from what I've read and what I understand from the literature on the system. I've got the documentation on the system. I also went to their website. It's a German company that manufactured this, and it's a pretty high-tech system on what it does.
So, I mean, I'm trying to understand whether this monitoring unit or units is measuring flicker hours from all sources, or is it just measuring flicker hours from 1 or 2 sources? Because there are 8 turbines back there. There are a total of 10 turbines, 2 on Route 117, but 8 turbines back there off 102. So I'm trying to understand what is actually being measured.
5 different turbines affect that property. There are 5 that actually affect it.
Okay.
That affect it. This monitors and shuts down the ones that would be affecting it the most, and that is, I believe it was 5. Hang on one second, please. The one that's doing it the most.
I guess my issue is this. The ordinance says 30 hours of flicker per year from all sources, all turbines combined.
Right, and that's what's being done.
And if we're just measuring flicker from some of the turbines and not all of them, that means that these would not be shut down as often as they could be.
No, it monitors all of them, and it shuts down if that contact point, that number 287 is receiving flicker from any of them, and it shuts it down. It shuts down based on, that's the one that's got, I don't know honestly how it's actually fully doing it, but it monitors all of them. It doesn't monitor just the one it's connected to. It monitors any of the other ones that are connected in the group. That's why there's control modules built into 2 separate groups over there, so it can monitor all of them.
So did the period of time for this 1 year countdown, what was the date that we began this count? January 1st or after that?
January 1st is when the new year starts for the 30 hours, correct.
And so the clock starts again next January 1st, is that correct?
Correct, it's calendar based.
Okay, so if you do not get monthly reports and then do the analysis, I mean, how are we going to know that there is compliance to this requirement in our ordinance?
Well, that's why I've contacted Epsilon to see what they can do on monitoring it. If they can't, then I'm going to look at other parties, because the agreement allows to go with whoever can monitor and keep them in compliance. So we will be finding a company that will make sure that it stays in compliance.
Okay, until that point, you're going to be getting the monthly report yourself, and
We will be getting a monthly report starting a couple of days. We'll get the first one. Correct. I've had the other one that showed the original shutdown times and all of that, but we'll be getting a monthly now, moving forward.
okay. What recommendations would you make for us going forward? Because this has been a problem for many years now. And what can we do to make it better for the residents in this area?
Ma'am, I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head. I don't know what we could do to make it better on those. They were allowed to go up. They're there. They're in compliance as far as the flicker. And I mean, the issue of sound is something new. And I've given you documentation on that. But at this point, I don't know what else we can do to alleviate any more of the issues involving this.
Okay. Are there any other questions by members of the council at this point in time? Ms. Ludwig?
Maybe not a question, but more of a follow-up comment, President Dixon. So just to add on to your question about what can we do, I know there was a settlement several months ago in relation to the turbines. I know that we're working on this. Mr. Wazika, you said you're working on getting the reporting, but we still have a number of citizens who appear to be affected. Admittedly, as Member Shockley noted before, I also don't know the full history here, but it would be helpful if we determined whether we can investigate or look into whether there are other things we can do. I don't know if that means, something like a turbine ordinance, similar to what we did for solar. But it's certainly something that maybe we can continue the discussion on later this year. I don't know if that would provide relief to some of the residents who are having an issue currently, but maybe we can look towards the future and use some lessons learned here. So more of a comment. Thank you.
There is a turbine ordinance now, Ms. Ludwig.
We do have a wind facilities ordinance, and we have been working on updating that with a small study group. But we have been told that we can update the ordinance, but it would not be retroactive to existing structures that had already been allowed in under a particular ordinance requirement. But we certainly will look at updating the wind facility ordinance because it would also include sound. But as I said before, usually these things are not retroactive, but we can look into that. Okay. I'd like to open it up to, unless there are any other questions, I'd like to open it up to public comment, 10 minutes for this particular subject. And we do have VJ Knapp on the phone. Mr. Razika, could you let her in, please?
Mrs. Knapp, could you please give your full name, spell your last name, and give your address, please? Mrs. Knapp? Mrs. Knapp? Hello, Mrs. Knapp?
It appears that she's not on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you, VJ Knapp.
Oh, now I can't hear them. God damn it.
Honey, you're speaking, they can hear you. See the lady laughing? That's because she's hearing you swear at her.
Sorry.
There you go.
So I have the microphone.
Switch that one to the top one right there.
This guy?
Yep.
Okay, how about now?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Woo! Hi. So BJ Knapp, KNAPP, 2151 Victory Highway. So I am currently impacted by the wind turbines. I have 4 of them that are 0.4 miles from my back door. Noise is more of an issue for me than flicker is. We often have very loud turbine whooshing overnight at all hours of the night. It often wakes us up. So I had a few questions based upon the presentation that I saw tonight. So in looking at that map of all the flicker receptors, I would like to know how it was determined where these receptors should be placed, because it would seem that the bulk of them were placed on the east side of 102 where nobody lives. They seem to be in the Maxwell Maze facility.
No, they were all based on the 1.25 mile radius around the turbines.
It seems to me that a very large concentration, according to the map, was on the east side of 102 away from the houses, though. A lot of the white dots were over there. I don't know if we can bring up that map again.
I'm going to bring up the report. Hang on one second. Let me do this. Share my screen. I'm going to bring up Are you seeing? You should be seeing a report.
Right. I wanted to see that map again that you had in your PowerPoint.
Yep, that one.
All right. Here's the full maps, and you got was a piece of it before. So here's the full map with every one of these white dots is one of the receptors, one of the houses or buildings that were throughout, and on how this was done.
Okay.
There's one with, and you can see, I can't zoom this in where I'm going to get any real detail out of it for you. But if we look down, you should see.
I think your question has to do with Route 102, and I think this is showing, is that Route 14?
That's 14, yes, you're right.
You want to see Route 102. She's asking the question as to whether more receptors are actually across the, would be east of 102 and not west.
They're not. They're all over there. They're spaced out based on, or it's based on the 1.25 mile radius on any of the buildings that are out there. That's what they work from. At least, again, that's what the report is indicating. This was done, and I pulled this report up on. We received this, like I said, back in 18. So I've gone through the analysis and done it from there. But it's all based on the properties that are out there.
Okay.
They weren't random locations for the points.
Okay, so this is the spot that I'm most interested in because this is where I live. Okay, so way off into the east, we have many receptors way over there, which of course they're not going to see anything because that's quite far.
Right, but that was the 1.25 miles away from the furthest, from the what do you call it? From the turbine itself. So that's how they model these.
Okay. My other question is, what is the ETA for the outside party to start monitoring this? I think it would behoove the town to have our own data.
Well, that's why I'm working with them to get this done as quickly as possible. Hopefully it won't take that long to get this fully operational with the outside monitoring. I'm hoping no more than a month or so prior to when the summer months are here, get it done during the winter when there's, my understanding, less flicker. So, but get it done so we know it's in compliance once the summer comes.
Okay, then my final question is relates to the noise, which is the issue that impacts us the most. Will a similar study be done as it relates to noise in addition to the flicker?
That hasn't been determined by the council yet. If that's something this council so chooses, then we could do that and have an analysis done based on that. on a similar type study.
So when will the council make a ruling on that?
It's up to the council. That's in their hands. If they want to move forward with something like that, we can put an agenda item up. They can discuss it, and then we can get a company to go and do that analysis.
Okay, I look forward to learning more about remediation for noise. Thank you. And those are my only questions.
Thank you for your questions, BJ.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the members of the public now?
There are no others at this point, Madam Chair.
Any additional questions from members of the council? Mrs. Shockley?
So I'm just wondering, just based on Mrs. Knapp, not, I'm guessing she has a receptor if she's within that distance.
She is a
The
receptor.
turbines?
I heard that. Every house, a receptor is simply a location.
Okay, so you don't put anything on the house, you simply...
No. They
Okay.
just call that location a receptor. That was
Okay.
the designation they used during the reporting. You
And
know.
she also mentioned she was within 0.4 miles, and I thought 0.51 was the shortest. So I'm just wondering, like, where measurements may have...
No. The shortest we would have modeled out was a half mile out. We chose to model out a 1.25 miles based on the Connecticut standard. There is no standard. What I said was the 0.51 would have been of receiving it. That's why it's over 600 that don't receive any, because they're so far out. And that's what we use that we didn't know about.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move to agenda item.
Ms. Ludwig has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Ludwig?
Thank you. So Mr. Wazika, so it sounds like we had this analysis done in 2018. And so that we didn't review.
By former planning director as well. So it's been used. It's issues involving this, and I'll just put it.
So that tied us up in court cases also. So that just as to what is the requirement. So that's one of the answers.
If you would like, I'll send you a copy of it. I'll send a copy.
And I don't know if we can answer that tonight.
Flicker. That's all this Epsilon study is about, is involving the wind turbines.
Okay. I have this weekend, so this is kind of the first time I'm learning about some of the...
Said that when you buy paint, you can, it's not really a company, it's a 501c3 in Washington, D.C. And what they do is really a deposit. That deposit funds this program. So all we're doing is we're setting up our DPW transfer station almost like a franchise. And if you go to the very end of the contract, at page 65, the town actually can opt to save some of the good paint, some of the salvageable paint, and on a shelf that can be set up by the DPW as part of the transfer.
Like no less than a half a gallon on a latex, or
you can sell the paint there, but you're not going to
drop off the paint. Do they have to be a...
That's for Kent County. E-waste right now is, and we can expand upon it as it gets better.
Thank you.
Instituted other recycling projects like the pink bag program, and then the green would report to the council on the success of these programs that we have instituted. Are the members of...
Question or comment? I think anytime we can get waste, can residents provide paint cans that are open, that have dried paint in them at the bottom? Does it have to be salvageable paint? Just wanted to clarify that, that's all.
Yeah, right now, any open cans that have sawdust or dried out can go in your normal waste stream. Those are empty cans. This is for partial